So for your final project, you need to come up with your own tables for a database. And it doesn't sound like it would be a difficult task, but this is probably one of the more difficult things you're going to do in this class. So I do have a couple of generic examples that you can look at for ideas, but I really suggest that you try to come up with a database that is around a hobby of yours or something that you're interested in, because you're going to spend a lot of time working on it. So I have a hobby. I do a lot of photography work. So I'm going to do a little database on that. And eventually I'd like to open up an Etsy store. So I'm going to kind of do the database with that in mind. So information that I would want for this would be probably the artwork itself. I would probably have to have some IDs associated with my different images and whether they're framed or not, or if I've got them mounted on wood, you know, however I did them, I would have to have an ID for each one. And probably want to know the medium. So, and probably how it's mounted. And size. And probably my cost. And let's see how that looks. So I do digital art. So this might be a digital artwork, maybe photography. That's pretty much what I do. I can see a problem already that we're going to end up having to fix. All right, so let's say I've just got these pieces. And how might I mount them? So I might have this one matted and framed. And this might be mounted on wood. And we'll just have this one be matted. So I'm going to change size to dimensions. So let's say this is 8 by 10. And this one is 20 by 24. And let's say this is 16 by 20. 16 by 20. And this matted one, we'll do that one 16 by 20 as well. All right. All right, so matting does not take me a whole lot of time. And my cost, I think I'm going to put price over here. And when I determine price, it also takes into account how much time I spent. So I think I need to have a description of my pieces in here. And let's see. This might be high contrast, black and white course. This may actually, we'll move that down to photography. And for the digital, probably would have some mixed media. Let's see, mixed media lighthouse. This might be my grungy series. We'll call it a grungy pier. Photography, do a high contrast zebra. And we'll say mixed media fair. Okay. So my cost for matting is not too terribly much. It would be the print plus the mat. So let's say 6. Framing is expensive. So let's see, matting and framing. And for 20 by 24, it could run me $60 to get it printed and framed, even getting frames on sale. Mounting on wood, that's cheaper. Let's say probably 30. And this is just matted. So that's probably 10. Okay. And let's see. Pricing. I'll fill that in later. So this would be, we'll call this inventory. Then I'm going to have customers. And so I would have to have some kind of an ID, a name, address, city, state, zip code, email, and phone number. And let's see. So usually when I privately sell, they just pay me through PayPal. So I'm not really going to worry about payment methods. But I should keep track of where I'm selling things. So this might be locations, call it. And I would give each location an ID, a name. So we would have Artisan Village, so the place I've sold. Website, it's another place. Etsy, another place I could sell, but I haven't, would be art shows. And I guess I could sell at craft shows. All right. And instead of artisan, I think I'm going to put co-op gallery. And also I could do just a regular gallery. Okay. So those are just different places you can sell. So I've got my inventory, I've got my locations, I've got customers. So then I also need what they bought. And I could have customers buying more than one thing. So I would probably have some kind of an order or sales table and a details table. So I'm going to pause while I fill in some of this data because I think it is really helpful when we're trying to figure out what we need to store if we're looking at actual data. So I'm going to pause a sec. All right, so I kind of filled in the data, figured out what I charge for price, got my customers in here, locations they could buy from. So now I'm ready for orders. So your order is going to have some kind of an identification. It'll have a date, and it'll have the location we purchased from. So it'll be location ID. And so we have locations 1 through 6. So let's start filling in some of this. And we'll fill in the date in a minute. So location, we said we had 6 of them. So we'll just randomly throw some stuff in there. They'll have a date that they bought. And they may have bought more than one thing. So the quantity that they bought in each item that they bought would be more on the order detail. So on the order itself, we have to have the date, the location, and probably the customer ID, so who bought it. And let's start putting in our keys here. So artwork ID, this is a primary key. And for our customer, their ID is a primary key. Location ID is a primary key. And for order, our order ID is also a primary key. And we're connecting to the location using the location ID, so that becomes a foreign key. And we're connecting to our customer using the customer ID, which is also a foreign key. And we have 5 customers, so I'm just going to kind of randomly throw them in here. And then we'll have dates in here. And let's go over to the detail, because we don't want to start putting which item and quantity, because that's going to give us some repeating groups. So if I did put the item that they purchased, so I might put their inventory number, and if I put the quantity in here, if one person bought more than one thing, then we would have a problem because we'd need to repeat the order ID, right? So if customer number 5 purchased a couple different items, that's going to be a problem because then we can't assign them a unique ID. So I already know that we can't put number in here, but I wanted you guys to understand why. Okay, so if this is the same customer, okay, Zoe Kravitz, and she bought several different things, then if we set up the inventory and the quantity here, we would have to repeat the ID number, her order ID. We can't do that. So each individual item and how many they bought of that item, we're going to put over in our order detail. So for right now, we're going to kind of leave this alone. I'll fill in the date later in a couple of minutes, and we'll go over to the order detail. So the order detail is going to have its own ID number, and it's going to be connected back to the order using this order ID number. So we'll call this the order ID. So the detail ID is going to be the primary key. And we're connecting back to the order. And that will be a foreign key. And here we should be able to do the inventory number and the quantity. And inventory number is going to be a foreign key. So if we connect this table back to inventory, we'll have access to the price information. Okay? And if we're storing the quantity here, we will be able to pull the price information from our inventory table, multiply it by the quantity, figure out, how much they paid. So the order detail ID is going to be completely unique. And it's going to track back over to the order number. And so let's say a couple from order 1, a couple from order 2, something like that. And how many items do we have? We only have 5. Oops, we don't have 6. All right. And for quantity, all right. Then let's go back over here. I'm just going to pop in some dates. Let's see. Okay, and they're all different, that's fine. Okay, so at this point, I've got 5 tables, and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna have to split into at least one more. So that'll give me my 6 that I actually need. So let's take a look here and walk through normalization. So 1NF, basically we can't have 2 rows that are the same, and we can't have any repeating groups within a row. So we can't have multiple values in a single row. So I can't say like matted, mounted, multiple things within one. I would have to separate them out. And I believe I have done that, because if I did have other sizes, they would be listed as separate inventory items. 2NF, basically if you have a single primary key, it is in 2NF. So if you're in 2NF, you are also in 1NF. So we have all unique rows, we have no repeating groups, so we're all good for 1NF and 2NF. 3NF basically is saying that every column depends on your key. And you can't have columns that are depending on each other instead of the key. So this particular item number is for this mixed media lighthouse. This is the medium that it was created on. This particular piece is mounted, 8x10, cost, price. And so they're all kind of related to my key, because my key is only being used for this particular item. Okay. And so this is in 3NF. So if I was to change my ID, everything else would change as well. Okay, the piece itself, the medium, mounted, dimensions, all of that. Okay, so they're dependent on that ID. So this is in 3NF. So let's look at customers, because I know there's a problem in here. So if we look for repeating rows, okay, do we have two rows that are identical? No. Do we have multiple values within one area? So within one column and one row, do we have any one that has more than one value? And no, we do not. Okay, so this does meet 1NF. So is it 2NF? Well, we only have one key, so yes. Then we get to 3NF, and this is where we have the problem, okay? Because this ID can only refer to this particular person at this address, city, state, zip, email, cell number. So we're looking for transitive dependencies, which are columns that are dependent on something besides the primary key. So just looking at this, the address is dependent on the key, but the city and the state are not really dependent on the key, they're dependent on the zip code. So if the zip code changes, the city and state are going to change. The address won't change, the name won't change, but the city and state will. And I can actually see it drop to my leading zeros. Or it might have been my trailing zeros. I'm going to have to change the format of this. Let me see. I'm actually going to change zip code to text because that will keep my zeros on the end. All right. So the zip code, city, and state really should go into their own table. Because if the zip code changes, city and state are going to change. So if I change this one to 85001, that means that the city and the state are now Phoenix, Arizona. So I'm going to add a zip code table. And I'm going to take this, Control C to copy, and Control V to paste. Now I'm going to reorder this a little bit. So I'm going to highlight this, grab a border and drag it. And then I'm going to highlight it again, grab a border and drag it back. And zip code is my primary key. And all of those are unique. So I'm going to come back over here. And zip code stays because that is how we're going to connect the customers to their city and state. We're going to use zip code. City and state, we are going to remove. So if I just drag over those letters, I can right click on them and delete. Okay, so at this point, this is in 3NF. And zip code is 3NF. The city and state are totally dependent on the primary key. We do not have any repeating rows or groups, and we only have one key. So let's go look at location. And here's another one. We have one key. We don't have any repeating rows or groups. And so this one column is totally dependent on our key. So that one's good too. And then we'll take a look at the order. So we have the order number. The date is referring to the order number. The location where that order was sold is unique, referring to the order number as well. And this is the customer who bought it. Okay, so that all is reflective of the number. We have no repeating groups, and we have only one key. So this is in 3NF. Come over here. This is the order detail. And so for each item they ordered. Each item has its own little ID, and we have the order number it came from. We have the inventory number and how many they purchased. Okay, so looking at this, we do not have any repeating rows. Each row is unique. Within each little cell, we don't have repeating groups. We don't have more than one value. And everything is dependent over on the key. So this is the item detail. So this is the order it came from. This is the inventory number that they actually ordered and how many. So that is also in 3NF. So at this point, I have 6 tables. I've identified my keys, my primary key and my foreign key. Okay, I have the data entered, and I have a way to connect all of these tables. So at this point, this is completed and it's ready to turn in. So I would just need to give it a name, save it, and upload it.